the bell that breaks the night, matins and lauds. Imagine you are wrapped in the faint warmth of a rough woolen blanket, the kind that scratches just enough to remind you it is real. The dormitory is a long stone hall where the moon finds narrow cracks in the shuttered windows and spills silver ribbons across the flagstones. You feel the air first, sharp, thin, and cold enough that each breath seems to chime inside your chest like glass touched by ice. It is well below freezing tonight, yet no brazier burns. The rule allows none. Beside you, a row of sleeping figures lies motionless under identical blankets, each head shaved in the familiar tonsure, each breath rising like quiet ghosts toward the beams above. A single bell, deep, iron-throated, breaks the hush. One note, solemn and slow. You do not startle. You have been trained for this. Instead, you let the vibration travel through your bones, rolling like distant thunder, granting you permission to rise. Your feet find the icy floor. The shock is bold but brief. Imagine you fastening the coarse belt of your habit, fingers stiff with cold, yet the motion practiced enough to feel almost fluid. The rule of Saint Benedict allows no spoken word before prayer, so silence becomes a second skin. Now picture the lantern-bearer, the vigiles of the night, moving down the corridor. In his hand swings a small iron lamp fed by tallow, its flame no larger than the nail of your smallest finger. He stops at each cubiculum and, with a delicate tug on a braided cord, nudges any tardy brother to wakefulness. In some monasteries this cord is called the sinner's leash, a gentle reminder that even sloth requires saving. 1, 2, 3 pulls, never more, lest the rope fray and cost the scriptorium precious hemp. Shocking fact. 1. In harsh winters, these ropes freeze stiff, so the lantern-bearer warms them in his mouth before each tug, leaving faint teeth marks scholars still find in preserved fragments. You step into the cloister walk. The whole compound sleeps except for the chorus of your sandals against stone. Cadence kept purposefully slow. The cold presses closer here, funneling between walls that have stood for 2 centuries. Lantern light reveals frost blooming on the mortar like a quiet constellation. Your breath becomes part of the scenery, drifting upward and vanishing among arches that echo soft sighs. Shocking fact 2. Any brother who breaks the great silence by accident must spend the next day seated on a low wooden stool studded with blunt iron nails. Not enough to pierce flesh, but enough to remind him every time he shifts. The oratory door stands open, its bronze hinges greased with goose fat to keep them silent. Beyond lies darkness, thick yet welcoming. Candles are too precious for the hour before lauds. Instead, you find your place by memory, and the pale glow of 2 windows someone has left unshuttered, so the moon may keep watch. You incline your head until your chin brushes the rough linen of your scapular. The cantor begins with a single word. Domine. His voice is soft as worn velvet, and in that instant every heart aligns to it like iron filings to a lodestone. Gregorian tones, low and measured, seep into the chamber, rolling across the capitals of columns carved by long-dead hands. 7-second echoes shimmer in the nave, each note a ripple launched upon still water. Shocking fact. 3. Architects shaped choir stalls to amplify this resonance deliberately, believing prolonged reverberation unsettled demons hiding in the rafters. As matins flows into lauds, you lose sense of time. Instead, you feel a gradual warming, not of the air but of the spirit. Chant becomes lullaby. Repetition becomes rest. The final psalm tapers into silence, thin as mist, and when it dissipates, you discover your shoulders have relaxed, your jaw unclenched. You remain kneeling, letting stillness do its work. Outside, the night sky pales by a fraction. Dawn is a rumor on the edge of the horizon. In this hush, you realize the bell that shattered your sleep has also coaxed you toward a deeper peace, one that bears no weight of dreams, one that floats just beneath waking thought. Imagine you breathe once more, slow, steady, satisfied, and follow the lantern back to the cloister, ready for the next quiet wonder. Lanterns through the dark corridors. Imagine you tracing the same worn path generations have followed before sunrise. You slip through a narrow door into the western passage, where no window waits to guide you. Only the faint yellow glow that dances in front of the brother leading your little procession. His lantern is a simple clay cup, pierced to let air reach the wick. Each step sends shadows leaping along the walls in ragged silhouettes that look, for one soothing instant, like saints in slow procession. Speech is forbidden, yet conversation hums beneath every gesture. A raised eyebrow becomes a question. Are you cold? A twitch of fingers near the chest replies, my heart keeps me warm. An entire silent lexicon blooms in this darkness, 50 gestures codified by necessity. 2 fingers brushed over lips. Forgive me. A palm pressed to the head. I need ink. You learn to read glances the way a sailor reads stars. Shocking fact. 1. Several of these monastic signs survive almost unchanged in modern European sign languages, a quiet inheritance from centuries of cloistered hands. The corridor turns. Stone becomes timber as you pass the granary loft. Here the air smells faintly of rye and dust, and the sweeter scent of stored apples harvested before Michaelmas. Your lantern-bearer pauses to shield the flame from a playful draught, and in that brief stillness you hear a soft scurrying above. The mice begin their nocturnal pilgrimage across beams. There is no fear of infestation. The cats of the monastery patrol with the same diligence you give to psalmody. And yet, shocking fact 2. Any monk who accidentally kills a cat in pursuit of mice must fast for 40 days on bread dipped only in water, a penance harder than it sounds when winter lingers. You reach a small doorway half your height, fashioned more to trap heat than to please posture. Bending, you slip inside the calefactory, one of the very few heated rooms, its firebox glowing faintly. Fingers of warmth curl toward you, and for a moment your cheeks sting as frozen skin remembers blood. Brothers stand in near darkness, palms extended to welcome each furtive wave of heat. No one stays long. 3 heartbeats, and you yield your place. The rule states charity begins with discomfort evenly shared. From the calefactory, you emerge into the southern cloister walk, the one exposed to the garden court. Here, moonlight pools freely, painting everything in delicate indigo. Snow on the flagstones crunches beneath your sandals, each muted crack a reminder of discipline. Imagine you inhaling the scent of cedar beams above and distant lavender, still clinging to last summer's stems, stored in sacks under the novices' beds. The silence feels thicker here, as though the open sky presses its finger to your lips. Halfway down the arcade, you pass a wooden board hung with a slim rod tethered by rope. It is the tabula, the keeper of small offenses. A novice who oversleeps may mark a notch beside his name. An elder who forgets to extinguish a candle does the same. At week's end, the abbot will count notches and assign penances. Shocking fact 3. 30 notches grant you an entire day without speech, a punishment strangely coveted by those who find joy in wordless contemplation. Some brothers, it is whispered, let slip minor faults just to taste that silence. The lantern lights your final turn toward the vestibule of the scriptorium. As you cross the threshold, you notice the first paling of the eastern sky, a wash of pearl against lingering stars. You have traversed the monastery's arteries in darkness, guided by one trembling flame and 100 inherited gestures. Now dawn approaches, and with it the promise of ink, parchment, and the quiet scratching that binds heaven to earth one letter at a time. Imagine you pause, hand upon the lintel, feeling the cold grain of oak and the gentle thrum of purpose beneath your rib cage. The corridor behind you sighs, as though folding its shadows for another night. Ahead lies a room filled with silent industry, waiting for your breath, your heartbeat, your hand steady upon the quill. Quiet scripts at dawn, the scriptorium. Imagine you stepping into a chamber where dawn itself seems to whisper rather than burst. The scriptorium greets you with a breath of warm air, scented faintly with beeswax, vellum, and the metallic bite of fresh ink. Brass braziers smolder along the walls, not for comfort, luxury is frowned upon, but to keep ink fluid in winter's grip. Their embers paint slow-moving constellations across ceiling beams centuries old. You take your place at a slanted oak desk polished by hands long vanished. A single window above offers pre-dawn light, pale and uncertain. Until the sun climbs higher, you rely on a horn lantern resting near your elbow. Its translucent panel glows like watered silk, casting a gentle radiance that never flickers in a breeze. Silence reigns, yet it is not empty. It hums with careful motion. The soft clink of penknife against quill shaft, the muted rustle of parchment turned like the page of some enormous living creature. On the shelf beside you stands a small earthenware pot filled with ink as dark as winter midnight. Today it is tinged with green, a recipe containing copper salts prized for its permanence. Shocking fact 1. Certain pigments here include traces of arsenic and lead. Over years they turn the fingernails of diligent scribes a ghostly gray-black, a quiet memento mori written on the body itself. You dip your quill, let excess droplets kiss the rim, and begin. Imagine you writing the opening line of a sermon. Audite, fratres dilectissimi. Listen, most beloved brothers. Each letter flows from broad stroke to delicate hairline, a rhythm at once mindful and hypnotic. 10,000 characters must be captured before the noonday bell, else supper will be served unseasoned. Salt is a scarce treasure. You can almost taste the incentive on your tongue. Yet, rather than haste, you choose precision, knowing true speed resides in movement so practiced it becomes breath. Hours pass disguised as heartbeats. The room brightens by degrees until sunlight spills full over your page, revealing every weave and scar within the vellum. You pause to trim your quill, the penknife shaving translucent curls that settle like feathers. Across the aisle, a brother shifts, stretching fingers cramped into gentle claws. No words are exchanged, yet camaraderie pulses between you. Souls woven together by ink, bound by silence thicker than rope. A novice at the far end of the bench commits a small error. Homo, written where domino belongs. He feels the slip like a pebble in his shoe. Tradition allows scrapers of moon-sharpened pumice to lift the mistake. Yet today, the master corrector chooses another rite. He tilts the student's hand and pours a single drop of ink across the skin, letting it seep into the lines of the palm. Shocking fact 2. This mark of humility will remain until scrubbed raw, an intimate reminder that a page may be amended, but the body keeps score. By mid-morning, the sun has climbed high enough to silence the horn lantern. You extinguish its wick, grateful for the way fire and ink have conspired to birth pages glistening like wet silk. You count quietly. 8 folios copied, nearly 6,500 letters. The goal of 10,000 no longer feels distant. Instead, it gates itself behind a peaceful determination. Before returning to your work, imagine you rest your gaze on the open window. Beyond, sparrows flit among monastery eaves, each wingbeat scattering snowflakes loosened by the day's first warmth. You breathe deeply, tasting the faint sweetness of beeswax mingled with winter air. Inside the scriptorium, every soul is tuned to the same frequency. Ink on parchment, breath in unison, a heartbeat echoing in wood and stone. Shocking fact 3. The abbot's annual ledger notes that each illuminated manuscript costs the monastery 3 healthy sheep in parchment alone. Yet no one ever dares suggest frugality, for the word deserves more than flesh can measure. In that awareness, you bend back to your task, quill poised like a tiny spear aimed at ignorance itself. Letter by letter, stroke by stroke, you feel the world narrow to a point so precise it disappears, leaving only stillness, only peace. The bell for the next office will come, not yet, but soon, and when it does you will rise light-headed with quiet pride, ink-splashed thumb a modest badge of purpose. For now, imagine you exhaling, shoulders soft, heart steady, and letting the parchment invite the next beautiful syllable into being. Stone echoes and the living choir. Imagine you leaving the scriptorium with ink still cooling on your thumb, and following a ribbon of pale sunshine across the cloister. The bell for prime has not yet sounded, yet the choir gathers early, drawn by a need older than sleep itself. You slip through a side door into the nave, a cavern of carved air where columns climb like petrified trees and ribs of stone hold up a sky made of timber and slate. Light pools only where slender lancet windows allow it. So, for the first moments you walk in thick dusk, guided by the faint smell of beeswax and the soft scuff of sandals ahead. A brother nudges a shutter just enough for dawn's first spear of gold. It strikes the floor, breaks against a pillar, and splinters upward in quiet brilliance. Dust motes swirl inside the beam like slow snow, each one a miniature planet briefly alight. You take your place in the choir stalls, oaken seats polished to mirror smoothness by centuries of robes, and rest your hands on the misericord, the little ledge that spares weary legs. The rule still forbids speech, but a rustle of pages and a gentle clearing of throats form a language older than words. The precentor lifts 2 fingers. The pitch pipe yields a single note, low, round, and resonant. You draw breath with 50 others. Dozens of lungs become one bellows. Imagine the first chord leaving your chest, sliding out upon the air like warm oil poured onto water. The sound blooms, strikes vaulted stone, and returns to you after 7 heartbeats, a perfect ghost of itself, layered atop the next phrase so that chant and echo weave an invisible tapestry. Shocking fact. 1. Medieval architects angled these ribs and niches deliberately. They measured with animal bladders filled with sand until a single syllable would linger 7 full seconds. Enough, so they believed, for any lurking demon to grow dizzy and retreat. The chant slips into a soft kyrie, 3 notes rising, 3 notes falling, each shaped to hold the vowels like a cradle. Eyes half closed, you feel vibration in your teeth, in the bench beneath you, even in the pulse at your wrist. After several versos, the precentor lowers his hand. The choir stops, but the room keeps singing for 2 more breaths, then folds into silence so deep it hums. Without warning, lamps are snuffed. Total darkness descends, voluntary cleansing. Your other senses bloom. The mineral scent of damp stone, the faint tang of wax, the almost inaudible pat of someone's heartbeat felt through wood. Shocking fact, 2. During certain vigils, the choir sang entire psalms, in pitch blackness, trusting that pure sound warded off pride as surely as it banished unclean spirits. Some brothers later swore they saw light dance inside their closed eyelids, angels shaping the notes. A voice, barely more than a breath, begins a solo antiphon. His tone hovers just above silence, inviting rather than commanding. It threads through you, coaxing hidden tension from the hinge of your jaw to the small muscles of your spine. 2 measures in, another voice joins, then another, until sound forms a slow river carrying you downstream. A novice coughs. Instantly, he bows to beg forgiveness without words. Moments later, he sips from a small flask, wormwood steeped in spring water as bitter as sorrow. Shocking fact, 3. This gargle cured hoarseness, but numbed taste buds for weeks. Monks accepted the trade, believing clear voice outweighed appetite. When the final Amen melts into stillness, you remain seated, palms open, letting the hush settle over skin like soft ash. Something inside you has stretched and emptied, and where worry once sat there is now only quiet breath, moving in and out like a tide at slack water. The precentor whispers a dismissal, sandals shuffle, cloaks brush stone, and faint beams of returning lamplight guide the choir toward the refectory. The nave exhales, content. Imagine you walking back into the sunlit cloister, ears still ringing with invisible silver, and realizing the world now sounds softer, because you are softer within it. A sip of morning. Weak ale and dark bread. Imagine you following the smell of wood smoke and malt into the refectory, a long hall where every table is a horizon of humble fare. Sunlight angles through clear story slits, striping benches in alternating gold and shadow. You take your seat. A novice ladles thin barley pottage into wooden bowls, while another pours Cervisia monastica. Weak ale, cloudy and gentle, safer than the well water. The rule of silence bends slightly here. The reader may speak. His voice, steady and warm, unfurls passages from the lives of the desert fathers, tales of scorpions turned to salt, and stones that bled sweet water. Each word lands like a feather. Conversation among diners is still forbidden. You lift the ale. Its tiny bubbles kiss the rim, tasting of slightly sweet grain and faint apple. Shocking fact. 1. Each monk will drink 3 to 5 liters of this mild brew by day's end, enough to slake thirst, seldom enough to cloud mind. You tear a hunk of dark rye. The crust sings quietly under your fingers, and inside the crumb is dotted with neat holes, and a few specks that move. You do not flinch. Weevils are protein, a gift you did not sow. Shocking Fact 2. The kitchen purposefully does not sift them out. To waste food that walked itself into the larder would affront Providence. Halfway through the meal, a spoon clinks too loudly. A brother's lips part in reflex apology, but speech is forbidden. He freezes, head bowed. The prior gently taps the table. Penalty accepted. Tomorrow at breakfast, that brother will stand back to the room, plate held chest high, tasting his bread in solitude. Shocking Fact 3. Some monks claim the bread seems sweeter when eaten facing the wall, as though humility adds honey you cannot see. You chew slowly, listening to the wood settle in the rafters and the reader shape each syllable. Warm pottage glides down your throat, pooling like ember glow in your belly. The ale follows, cool and quiet. Outside the window, a single crow croaks, then flaps away into blue. Within, nothing flaps, only hearts beating in measured concord. The meal ends on 3 soft knocks. All rise, bowls are stacked, tables wiped with linen dipped in ash water. You bow toward the lectern in thanks for nourishment of body and of word. Stepping into the corridor, you feel a subtle buoyancy, as though bread and beer have become small warm stones in your pockets, balancing you between earth and sky. Imagine you drawing one slow breath, barley sweet on the exhale, and turning your steps toward the physic garden, awaiting the first full blush of morning. Dawn in the physic garden. Imagine you crossing the threshold into a walled garden where dawn has finally ripened into soft gold. The air here is several degrees warmer, held by stone walls that drank sunlight yesterday, and now release it like a long, quiet sigh. Beds of dark soil form tidy rectangles, bordered by planks that smell of rain and oak smoke. Frost still crisped the leaves an hour ago. Now droplets gather and slip from mint and rue like tiny crystal beads. You kneel beside Brother Laurentius, the infirmerer, whose hands seem perpetually dusted with thyme, pollen, and beeswax. He passes you a small wicker basket lined with rough linen. Today's task? Harvest sprigs of Melissa officinalis, lemon balm for the evening tisane, and a fistful of lavender heads almost foolish in their summer scent here in midwinter, kept alive under cloches of clear horn. You pinch the stalk just above a node, angle your knife, slice clean. The herb releases oils that rise as bright citrus on the cold air. Shocking fact. 1. This very infusion, lemon balm, lavender, a whisper of chamomile, will steep tonight in earthen pots. Its steam, breathed before compline, calms the mind so reliably that 17th century apothecaries copied the recipe verbatim, selling it as Syrupus somniferus monachorum. You cradle the cut stems gently, mindful not to bruise them. A flicker of motion draws your eye. A field mouse, all tremble and whisker, darts between sage bushes. Brother Laurentius moves to catch it but misses. The creature vanishes into a gap in the wall. He sighs but smiles. Live and let live. Shocking fact 2. Any gardener who fails to remove out a mouse from the beds but also refuses to dispatch it humanely must keep the following fast day, on water alone. A penance aimed at sharpening both mercy and vigilance. You rise and move toward the raised beds of Artemisia absinthium. Bitter wormwood. Thin gray leaves carry a scent both medicinal and faintly metallic. These, too, the choir will use. A handful, steeped in lukewarm water, provides the gargle that clears throats and numbs taste alike. You collect only the softest tips, letting the rest stand tall against the pale sky. Birdsong strikes up, sparrows again, gossiping from the apple espalier. Their chatter feels almost loud after hours of liturgical hush, yet it pleases rather than startles. Somewhere behind you a novice cranks the well bucket. Rope groans, water splashes. Sunlight slips higher, kissing the top edge of the wall, then the arch of the gate, then your own shoulders with a promise of day. Brother Laurentius beckons you to a bench beneath a quincy tree, whose bare branches hold tiny buds tight as secrets. He unrolls a scrap of parchment, inked with neat columns. Date, herb, use, quantity. He records your harvest in abbreviated Latin, beside L, balm. He writes ad somnum, for sleep. Beside lavand, he writes pro quiet cordis, for the quiet of the heart. Beside artem, he writes simply vox, voice. You marvel at how a single word can unlock such complex care. Shocking fact. 3. Before winter ends, Laurentius will brew a concentrated syrup of melissa, sage, and wormwood, thickened with honey. A teaspoon at night is believed to anchor the soul to peaceful waters. Recipes for this syrup appear nearly unchanged. In Renaissance pharmacopoeias, evidence that the garden's hush outlasts empires. Time dilates. The bell for terce will soon call you back to chapel, but for now the world consists of herb-sweet fingers and sunlight licking frost from furrows. You close your eyes. Behind lids, color persists. Violet lavender, green gold balm, silver wormwood. Beneath that, deeper hues. The dark of church aisles, the black-brown of rye crust, the deep indigo hush of pre-dawn corridors. All these tones weave a cloak of calm around your shoulders. Imagine you inhaling. Long, slow, through the nose, lemongrass bright, earth damp, smoke soft, and exhaling any last fragment of waking worry. The garden answers with silence deep enough to hear the sound of sap rising. Somewhere, a bell rope is grasped. Iron will strike iron, gentle yet insistent. You gather your basket, bow to Laurentius, and step toward the gate. As you cross the threshold, the sun finally spills in full, stretching your shadow slender across the cloister walk, and you realize 2 hours have passed like a single drifting feather. Your body feels both lighter and more rooted, as though every chant, every sip, every herb has tuned it to some quieter frequency. Imagine you carrying that frequency forward into whatever remains of night or day, trusting it will hum beneath every breath, inviting peace as naturally as lungs invite air. The monastery fades. The hush remains, ready to cradle you whenever sleep next comes calling.